Hey everybody, Dan Jennings here with the Blue Wave Report Candidates Corner, sitting here live with Alan Howe, running for president out of Pennsylvania. Hey Alan, welcome to Colony, New York. How you doing?
I'm doing fine.
Hey, tell us a little about yourself and what has motivated you to run for president.
Well, I was born and raised in Afton, New York, in a working class family. I live now in Carlisle, Pennsylvania, on a street filled with working class homes. In between that, I had a number of formative experiences, including 24 years in the Air Force, 2 decades overseas, and 2 decades as an NCO. Because of that, I'm very attuned to threats to our country, and so I'm running to confront and defeat four threats to our nation right now. One is a treasonous U.S. president, two is climate change, three, rising personal and institutional racism, and four is dangerously high levels of income inequality. But there's an underlying motivation to this as well. When I retired from the Air Force, I made a promise to the airmen I was leaving behind that I'd work to increase the number of educated and informed voters as a way to justify the sacrifices that I knew they were making and would continue to make. And so that's really motivating this campaign across the country, fighting fiction and fantasy with facts, making sure that we have voters who really know what they're supposed to be doing, know what's happening to them, and getting them out to the polls.
Great. Well, you and I have had about an hour here to sit and talk and get to know each other a little bit. And a couple quick questions. One is on your tax policy you and I were talking about earlier. How about you tell our viewers a little about that?
Sure. And this is part of the fixing the income inequality threat to the nation, which creates economic instability. And there are a lot of things we need to do along those lines, including minimum wage increases and supporting unions and so on. But we need two new tax policies. First, we need to repeal and replace the 2017 Republican tax law to provide better benefits for working class and middle class workers and higher taxes for the wealthy, back to where they were in the 1940s through the 1980s when we had lower levels of income inequality. The second thing we need to do is remove the income cap on Social Security payroll taxes so that members of Congress aren't getting away with paying 4.7% of their income in Social Security taxes, while everyday workers across this country are paying 6.2%. Members of Congress decide that there is a cap. They decide where the cap will be. They decide what the percentage below that cap will be. They decide that they're paying 4.7%, while the vast majority of American families are giving up 6.2%.
We had an extensive talk about fact versus fiction and why people vote the way we do. They do, specifically Owsley County, Kentucky, where over 90% of people are on food stamps, and over 90% of people also vote Republican, thus shooting themselves in the foot. So the question becomes one of fact versus fiction, and this is a question I ask of all candidates. When Ronald Reagan's FCC repealed the Fairness Doctrine, we saw a slow and steady decline in journalistic ethics to a place where a lot of our news media is more opinion than fact. What would you do to change that and reverse it back the other direction so that we get back to a Cronkidian era of news and away from a Hannity era of news?
Well, that's quite a challenge, and it might be more of a challenge than government itself can take on, but it is something certainly we can deal with. The Fairness Doctrine is something that Congress could reimpose on news media and try to level the playing field a little bit and at least provide disclaimers so people know clearly when they're hearing opinions and when they're hearing actual reporting and actual facts. There's a profit motive attached to news media, and it's a bit of a challenge to get eyes on their products, and so they're always going to be drawn towards sensationalism. But the government can do more to support news outlets that are providing facts and help Americans understand that they do need to know. It is in their interest to know what is happening to them in their communities and in their country.
Hyperpartisanship seems to be one of the major issues that is leading to the decline of our republic. How do we get people to start talking to each other about the issues instead of at each other?
That's also a bit of a challenge that might exceed what a government can do, but certainly we can do more to support facts. And for my part, I will be calling out people who aren't using facts, the folks who are spreading fictions and fantasies, and getting them to address what's really going on in the world. I'm challenged a lot by some other candidates about doing more to reach across the aisle. They're going to do more to cooperate with Republicans, and I understand what they're hinting at, but I always ask the question: cooperate on what? And I'll tell you this: if there are people in Washington who want to do things for the American people, I'm their greatest ally. But when they want to do things to the American people, I'm their greatest opponent.
Let's talk for a minute about climate change, and then we'll wrap this up.
Sure.
One of the things that I found with Hillary Clinton's campaign, and one of the reasons I honestly believe she lost the election, was when she went to coal country and said we were going to cost coal miners a lot of jobs, and did not follow that up and left that hanging, that she allowed the Republicans to take the jobs issue. Obviously, with climate change, we need to come up with a Green New Deal of some sort, whether it's the proposal by AOC or not. How would you go about selling this to the American public so that coal miners and other people don't have to worry about losing generations of jobs?
Well, a couple of things that are involved in that. One is we need to make education attainable for every adult from 18 to 55 or 60. And the easiest way to do that is right off the gate, or right off the bat, is to provide interest-free government loans for people who want to go to school to change their job set skills so they can do something beyond, for example, working in a coal mine. We have programs to help coal miners who have been displaced by changes to the economy. Those programs aren't sold well to coal miners, and when Trump came along and said, I'm going to bring back coal, then attendance in those programs declined remarkably. But we have to save the planet. The Air Force spent a lot of time teaching me about situational leadership. There are times when the issue is hugely important and we have time to talk about it at length, and we can have that national discussion and move forward. We're not at that point with climate change anymore. It's urgent and it's important, so we have to do things immediately. And that's why I've been calling for an immediate national deployment of clean energy sources, solar, wind, wave, and tidal, to replace all combustion sources of energy. And while we're deploying that across the country, we also roll out an infrastructure, a charging infrastructure that will allow us to move transportation off of diesel and gasoline onto electric as well. Between those two, energy production and transportation, we're talking about 58% of the CO2 emissions here in the country. That would be a huge step forward. It would give us the moral authority to push other countries to do their part as well.
Awesome. Well, thank you, Alan. It's been a pleasure meeting you today and having time to spend with you and discuss the issues.
Thank you very much, Dan.
You're welcome. And that is it for the Candidates Corner tonight. My guest has been Alan Howe, running for president out of Pennsylvania. And as always, people, I remind you, don't just comment, act. Have a good day, everybody.